let's shift a bit to what I think, my world selling CRM. We're really anchored in the space of the revenue lifecycle. I see this all the time where companies really are chasing everything that's in front of them. They, they're figuring out I'm seeing a decline here. Where should I be looking for my next opportunity? It's scattered. It's a lot of throwing mud at the wall. What's going to work? Mark, that's the reality if you own a business, any business, right? But for MSPs, what should they be thinking about when it comes to the revenue lifecycle?
Well, first and foremost, I guess the word lifecycle, it implies, right, that there's peaks and valleys, but ultimately, ideally, it's a never ending if it's a circle, right? But there is the this notion of getting net new clients, right? Proper onboarding, proper adoption, and making sure that we are playing our role to get them to buy into our MSP offering, if you will. And then, there's the user management, and the revenue portion of it. Again, I think you might have been alluding to this is, the revenue chase, I think of a dog, right? Chasing its own tail on some point. That's kind of the muck that people can get stuck in. And there's a lot of focus on net new, but at some point there needs to be a deliberate strategy and set of tactics and ways to maintain clients and renewal to, again, minimize that leakage. And the way to do that, again, we've got to sprinkle in touch points that are less about reporting and less about how we're meeting our SLAs or exceeding them, right? Less about looking at our heat map, if you will, of this account has only bought 50% of what we offer, so let's get new sales cycles in there. Embedding that into an actual account strategy and plan, right? To sequence those things and layer them in with ideas. That's how those peaks and valleys ultimately get smoothed. But, we have had a fair amount of clients in various MSP spaces, if you will, that brought us in to focus on that net new and how to go to market differently, perhaps. When we come to find that, they have a leakage or a hole in their bucket where 50% of the revenue is dropping out every year. To make up for that, you got to sell a heck of a lot more. And, that means entering new markets, new segments, and things like that. Suddenly they've got a really big revenue cycle problem. And again, I'm not trying to make it sound easy, but looking at, how to smooth that out over time, with a focus on that leaky bucket, I think helps a lot in terms of the revenue lifecycle.
So one of the things I see, like that CRM, when it's properly implemented, is supporting that plan, but you have to start with the plan. So they came in under this product or service. What's next? What's the next logical thing we should be selling for that customer? Again, we don't always want to be in that sell mode. I mean, we are, but we're working towards being that trusted advisor. We're doing all the things we need to do to really be customer focused and drive that intimacy. If you're doing that and you also have that account plan strategy laid out, now you've got something to execute against, something you can measure. And say, is that working? Oh, well, it's working in this area. It's not working so much in there. All right, what adjustments do we need to make? But if you don't have the plan and you're not measuring it, how do you adjust?
Well, and you're on to something else, which is there's a natural dilemma that occurs, which is compensation and how people are comped on quote unquote selling and booking new business, right? You mentioned elephant people, whale hunting, elephant hunting. Where am I going to make my number? Well, that might be completely opposite of what the next upsell at Anthony's account should be, which might be a very small portion of the overall revenue, generating of our portfolio. And there's friction there. And ultimately, we end up having to put, I'll say guardrails or play a little bit of a referee here with some of our clients on, playing the long game and being differentiated might be solving a small problem that is really important. And I understand it's only worth, $1 instead of $100, but we solve this for $1, right? And that's small revenue to us. We will be able to position ourselves for bigger dollar purchases later. Cause again, and I'm not saying it's not hard, right? Cause there is that tension there. So, we got to look at comp models and who ultimately calls the shots at an account, who owns the account strategy and plan. It's not always clear. And getting that, adopted starts to, solving that, I should say, begins to allow the freedom of where and how we upsell and things.
I think I've learned in the many years that I've been doing this, sometimes it makes it a lot easier to have an outside party like McMahon Ransford come in to guide that, to be the heavies, to work through those difficult issues rather than trying to tackle that on your own.
None of this happens by accident, right? We have this tendency because MSPs, like many businesses, but right, we go through these growth stages where in the early days, we're in this mass customer acquisition stage, and some clients are renewing and some aren't, but we are growing the top of the funnel fast enough that we aren't worried so much about the bottom of the funnel. And then we shift into the next phase. And that next phase is a bit of the Pareto principle where we've got 20% of our accounts that are worth 80% of our revenue, and they probably get 90% of our attention. And we have all the rest of these accounts. And because our executives are spending time there, our sales team is spending time there, we don't need to have the documented process and strategy because everybody wakes up every day worried about those top 20% of their accounts. But it's the 80% that will ultimately make or break your business long term, because as you're looking to grow and expand things, those are your opportunities to grow and expand. So knowing which ones of those have growth potential, right? Which ones are small now, but they have a potential to be one of your bigger accounts. And how do you talk about that objectively so that the organization can rally around that? Similarly, which ones are our cash cows, to use the traditional phrase there, that we must protect, but we don't have a lot of growth potential? We should treat those differently, and we should have a different strategy for how we do that. And those strategies are, like I said, it doesn't happen by accident. We need a shared organizational understanding. So we're deploying the right people and the right energy to the right accounts at all times. And I don't think you can solve the leaky bucket unless you view your account base that way. And most organizations, not only do they not do it, they don't even have the data organized in such a way that they can do that. And so, right, it's a very manual effort, and it's very anecdotal storytelling that, he or she who screams loudest gets the attention, rather than it being part of a real deliberate strategy.